Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. For those of you who aren't familiar with my stories, I, 31F, have a man-child entitled Brother 26M, who lives in the house I co-own with my mom. My mom has told him he has until May 31st to move out. I've been anxiously waiting for him to leave, doing my best to bide my time, but I have finally reached the end of my rope and for something that I'm not sure is the straw or the log that broke the camel's back. Last night, while I was in bed, entitled Bro informed me he would be taking my dog, Spot, for 3 days on some fishing trip. I told him there's no way he could do that. He said he wasn't asking. He was telling me. He said he's my dog too and that he is entitled to take him whenever he pleases. Here's the thing, though. 9 years ago, entitled Brother demanded a dog. I begged my mom not to. He had one previously, but he neglected it, and my mom ended up rehoming it, for which he never let her hear the end of. But of course she caved and the same problem persisted. Entitled Bro never cared for Spot. I ended up taking over his care, paid for his vet bills, fed him, took him to get groomed, etc. Things came to a head when we had to move in with family members, and they said we were not allowed to bring a dog. Entitled Bro didn't do anything to find Spot a new home. It was my problem. I found him a foster home, where I visited him every day after my college classes ended, and was able to get him back 2 years later when we finally had a place to live again. Additionally, when I moved out of my house for a year, Spot went with me. Spot sleeps with me every night and has my name on all of his records. He's now 10 and has arthritis. He takes meds for his hips and his stomach and needs frequent bathroom breaks. Oh, and he hates the water. So when little Bro said he wasn't asking me, he was telling me I knew that Spot would be miserable and possibly in pain that whole trip. He hadn't asked or even mentioned taking Spot before, so he is due for a refill on his pills tomorrow. Had I known, I would have gotten the refill sooner. I tried telling him Spot needs a lot of care, and he said, yeah, so just give me everything he needs, and I was so irritated. You wait until the night before to tell me this. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I could have just taken him and let you panic, but I was being nice telling you ahead of time. That did it. I don't know why, but every alarm bell went off in my head. I grabbed my purse, put on my slippers, and told Spot to get in the car. I drove to my fiancé's house and slept here last night. I was going to move into fiancé house this summer, but now I'm asking myself why the hell I'm waiting. Everyone on Reddit keeps asking me why I stay home, and right now I can't remember any of the reasons I had before. I'm done. My mom is staying out of it right now, and I'm glad because I genuinely don't care what she has to say. I know she doesn't want me to go, but I just can't take entitled Bro's little power trips. He can do whatever he wants to the house, punching holes in the walls, kicking the appliances, calling the house a dump, but I draw the line at him taking my dog without my permission. That's my baby, and I'm not going to just stand by while he does whatever he wants with my pet when I explicitly told him no, something that he rarely hears. P.S. I occasionally have asked Bro to let Spot out for bathroom breaks since he doesn't work until the afternoon, and his response is always he's too busy to do that. He has given me no reason to trust him to care for my dog for even a few hours, let alone 3 days on a fishing trip. So to start with, I'll just talk about what happened when her eldest daughter contacted me. I was relaxing in bed at home after pulling an all-nighter. This was back when I was swamped with commissions in 2022 and before I became an art director, when I heard my phone buzz. It was a message asking if I was me, and I asked who was texting me. This was basically the exchange. D, it's me B, Karen's daughter. Me, oh, the oldest one, how are you? D, I'm all right, I had to go through Mom's iPad to find your number. I wanted to let you know she passed away. I was surprised to say the least and asked B what happened. This crap is a bit strange, but this is the end of an entitled parent story, and I felt like it's something that people really need to hear. So, I hope this doesn't get taken down. If it does, I fully understand, but we can also see this as another person acting like an entitled parent to the previous entitled parent, if that helps. Because there is a controlling person in this story as well. Background: Karen had joined a woke Buddha-based cult. Now, first off, I want to make something very clear. The actual Buddhist faith I have absolutely no problem with. Their teachings have historical importance, and I love some of their ideals. This cult, however, was not at all like the actual teachings they pride themselves on. The cult was run by a person named Osigi, not sure on the spelling, but I'm using their true name. It's not actually her real name, but the name she believes some sort of cosmic entity chose for her. Because people need to be wary of this person and stay clear of them, and she was definitely a character. She acted like she meant well, but would subtly alienate Karen from other people and isolate her mentally. Constantly feeding Karen lies like she needed to devote herself completely to the teachings, listen to mantras constantly, only listen to her and no one else's advice, eat a specific way, do shrooms, you get the picture. Even convincing that Karen's true name is Orion for some reason, which even Karen questioned whether or not it was her true name, but Osigi would swear up and down that it was, and she couldn't change it. Karen would also push this cult's ideals onto her children, as well as emotionally neglect them because Osigi would tell her to do other things instead of look after her kids. Can you hear the alarm bells yet? Indoctrination 101 is at play here. And what's worse is that, for all I know, this Osigi person is still doing this to unsuspecting people, people who want to feel loved and be a part of a community, those kinds. Continuing on, I had a falling out with Karen sometime in 2021. See my story on the exploding glass baking pan and when I tried to admit fault for hitting someone else's car and her trying to lie to police for those stories. And at the end of that year, I moved states. A little over a year later was when her daughter contacted me and the conversation continues. Me. She passed away. How? When? D. A few weeks ago. D then went on to describe the whole thing to me in detail. Warning, the rest of this story will be talking about a very serious subject, such as set aside skip if you are sensitive to this topic. Alright, so the story is as follows. Karen, shortly after I'd moved away, lost her custody of her two youngest children to their father. Her oldest daughter, B, had a different father, so the two of them moved to another state and right next to Osigi's residence in her own little community. Karen was in an incredibly depressive state after losing her custody over the young ones and was being emotionally distant from B, to the point when Karen left the house and stayed at a friend's place for several days, leaving B home alone at 14 years old. E would ask to go see her mother and check up on her, but Osigi would deliberately tell her that her mother needs time away from her and is not mentally well enough to come back and see her daughter, barring B from going to her. Needs time away, bullcrap, I said. But when Karen didn't come back home for a little over a week, the neighbors started getting worried about B, and they, along with Osigi, contacted B's father who lived in Texas, to whom they sent B to go live with. This is where it all went downhill. Shortly afterwards, Karen came home to find her daughter gone and being told that B's father has her with him in Texas now. This is just conjecture, but I believe she spiraled, thinking that all her babies were taken from her and she would never see them again. Osigi and her neighbors found her on the floor of her home a few days later after they didn't see her at all for some time, having overdosed on sleep medication. These kinds of things leave an awful taste in my mouth. This Osigi could have cared less about these two's welfare, pulling Karen into her weird, idealistic, anti-government ways and making her ignore her own children and not getting the mental help she actually needed. Sorry, this is a sad story, but for what it's worth, that woman did not deserve what happened to her. Her indoctrination into the cult messed with her mind, and she already was thinking that the world and God was out to get her. I can only hope her children are doing all right at the end of all this, because after talking with B that day, I haven't heard from her since, and it's been a few years. She did tell me that her father and stepmother were treating her wonderfully, and she is happy living with them. So there is that, at least. Short backstory. I'm suffering from social anxiety, and the key element to this story is, I hate when strangers touch me. I get really uncomfortable, freaked out by it. That and the fact that I did take a couple self-defense classes a couple years ago. Not too much, but enough to know how to strike a punch. So this story happens in the local go-to-discount store. The dress code is a blue polo with the store's logo and a big yellow font on the back, and a small logo on the front. It really should not be hard to spot when someone is an employee. I was wearing a classic white shirt at the time, not remotely any hue of blue, and no bright yellow name tag on. Anyway, I was casually browsing the store, putting stuff in a cart I was carrying with me. At some point, I decided that I don't really want this random item. So naturally, I go to put it back because I'm a decent human being that doesn't leave stuff laying randomly. In comes Angry Witch. AB from here on. I'll be me. AB proceeds to first snap her fingers and say something along the lines of, "Hey, you, come over here." Like so many others on this post, I ignore her, thinking she isn't talking to me because why would she? I'm obviously not an employee. Turns out AB didn't like this. At one point, I walk away from her, toward the registers to pay for my goods. As I'm walking away, AB proceeds to walk up behind me, grab me by the shoulder, yell something the like of "How dare you, blah, 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 blah. I am a self-entitled witch, yada, yada, yada. You should not ignore me, squee, squee, and spin me around." As I mentioned, I'm a no touchy guy, and I'm not saying what I did is necessarily okay, but I acted on pure instinct from what I learned in self-defense. Mid-spin around, I yell as back off as loud as I can. A good tactic to use if you're being assaulted or harassed, as it works as a deterrent factor for the assailant because you're not an easy target, and it also draws people's attention, thus giving you witnesses. And proceeded to give a mixture of a shove and a punch. The result of the punch was a bee falling flat on her ass and proceeded to yell even more obscure things. Me: "What the actual heck are you doing, lady?" AB: "What the F? Did you just punch a paying customer? I demand to talk to your manager right now." Me: "What? I don't work here. What the f?" AB: "You filthy liar. You just assaulted me. I'll have you fired and arrested." Luckily, a manager was actually in the same aisle as we were, and why she didn't ask him is beyond me. He's wearing the name tag, and I guess he heard the shouting because he came rushing over. Manager: "What's going on here?" AB: "Your shitty employee just ignored me and proceeded to assault me completely unprovoked. I demand that you fire him and call the police." Me: "Lady, I told you I don't work here. You assaulted me." Of course, I'm going to defend myself. Manager: "This man doesn't work here." B, Aki is. He was putting things back on the shelves. Manager: "He still doesn't work here." Never has either, as far as I know. B, I still demand that you call the police. Now, this is where the malicious compliance comes in. The manager gave me a knowing look and a smile. Turns out the store has CCTV cameras pointing just down this aisle. Manager: "I'd be happy to call the police for you. I'm sure they'll be here soon." Me: "Look, man, I really just want to buy my stuff and go home." AB: "You're not going anywhere. You assaulted me. You're lucky I'm going to the police instead of beating the crap out of you." Mature, wow. Who would have imagined? Long story short, the manager called the police, and two nice gentlemen in uniforms were with us within 10 minutes, asking what happened. AB proceeds to give the story about how I completely ignored her because she had a question, and that I then proceeded to hit her and kick her and kick her. What the F? I shoved her out of the way. And I tell my story where she keeps screaming about how I'm a filthy liar and she's a poor victim because she's a woman and all other sorts of crap. The manager tells us he can quickly pull up the footage from the CTV, and the police were more than eager to see it. About 5 minutes later, we're all standing in the back looking at the footage. Officer: "Well, lady, it does look like you assaulted him, and he simply defended himself. I don't spot him either punching or kicking you." This results in arguing that would most likely be flagged for excessive foul language, and is just one giant mess of a discussion between her and the officers. I guess it can be summarized that she had a re moment. And it ends with her lunging at one of the officers. Looks like she was going to slap him or something, and she was taken back to the station with them. Apparently, attempting to assault an officer isn't very popular with said officer. I have no clue what happened to her, but I was free to go and got a free coupon for approx $35 for the store, which was more than the total I was buying for, so I was quite happy with that. I saw the manager a couple times in the store afterward, apparently. The crazy woman has been banned from the store, but he hasn't heard anything new either. It was all one big clusterfuck of what the heck is going on. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. I think this is a pro-revenge. If not, tell me and I will post it elsewhere. Also, this will be a long one. I'm very verbose, and it spills over into text too. A long time ago, I worked for a fast food place that has a very noticeable golden, bright yellow, usually, symbol. The people involved. Me, a 17, 19-year-old male, living in a medium-sized town in the UK. I'm now old, relatively. Damn, how does that happen? Also, a giant toker at the time, had dreadlocks and smoked almost every day. Bitch queen. A hostile, but shockingly beautiful and thoroughly nasty human woman, approx 1923-ish, during all this nonsense. Thigman, a second assistant manager who I got on really well with from day one. He took no crap from bullshitters, had zero tolerance for bitch queen. His usual greeting was something like, "Hey, bitch queen, who are you going to pick on today?" And if he saw her bullying someone, he would just walk in between her and the victim and bend down to stare in her face. She would walk off and pretend nothing had happened. More than once, he stated if BK were a man, she would have been beaten senseless by him by now. He hated violence, but she was really awful. Also, he was a bit of a unit, as in 250 lbs of muscle and a gym obsession long before it was cool. Also a fairly big smoker, we used to get high after work a lot with some of the other employees. Awesome manager. My store's first assistant manager, who was a wonderful woman who helped me as a human a lot in a huge number of ways. Protecting me from bitch queen was only part of it. Senior area manager, who I will call Sam, since all the actual Sams I have all been good dudes too. Also a great protector from these of BK. Monster bitch, the new store manager and the proximate cause of her own, and BK's downfall. Also a troll-faced harridan who oozed hate and bitterness. So time to tell the tale of how it panned out. I'd been there a year or so before Bitch Queen was promoted to manager. Until then, she was obnoxious but powerless. But somehow after marrying the store manager, she got a promotion, jumping the next 2 steps up at that, to second assistant manager. Surprising, eh? I had been warned by Thebigman when I was first hired to never be alone with her, as she had a number of young men fired for groping her by her store manager, Beth's fiancé husband, even when the video showed that there was no close contact, let alone groping in some of those cases. I was super careful in this regard. Bitch Queen started playing games with the Rhoda against me and a few others she hated. I think she hated me because I got along with most people, and she always hated sociable and non-bitchy people. Her favorites got the best shifts, and the people she hated had our hours cut and shifted about without warning. She would pencil in changes a few minutes before a shift started. I caught her doing it, but her store manager husband didn't want to deal with it, and then send home the one who turned up for their, now given away, shift with a warning. She would then call up and scream at the one who was off, but now suddenly on shift for not arriving when they had no idea the shift was changed. It's sort of genius, really getting 2 workers Bitch Queen hated in one blow. She did try this crap on me, but I just called Awesome Manager and she checked the computer records and sorted it out. She also let Bitch Queen know she was going to be checking the rotate daily and approving all changes, so Bitch Queen had to find a new tactic. I was a pretty hard worker. It made the time pass quicker for me, and was friends with the Awesome Manager and the big men, who protected me from Bitch Queen's bullcrap almost all of the time and would fix things when crap happened while Awesome Manager was off work. I also cultivated a good relationship with our Sam, and he ended up setting up a special store rescue team to sort out failing franchise usually. Stores in the area placing me in charge of it as the top trainer of the group Bitch Queen was maybe 7 months into being a manager at this point. This made me more or less untouchable, as long as I kept my nose clean, and so Bitch Queen went mental. She started on my friends bullying and abusing them in work and trying to get them all written up. They told me and I told Awesome Manager she slapped Bitch Queen down again, metaphorically of course. The big man made some complaints about her treatment of the other staff. She calmed down a little, until her husband got promoted to a different store some distance away. Later, Sam admitted this was an attempt to calm the drama at our store. But how wrong it all went? Our new store manager was a monster bitch, but good at hiding it to begin with. After a few weeks, Awesome Manager noticed that only young women were getting accepted after interviews, and pointed this out to me and Thebigman, and asked us to keep our eyes and ears out for anything dodgy going on. It wasn't long until it became clear what was happening. I had made pretty good friend with one of the new hires. I admit it, I was interested, and she was hot. I will call her Shine Sweet. She was a lovely but very sheltered young lady from a nearby village, living in a house share in the town we worked in. She went out with the girls, a group centered on Monster Bitch, Bitch Queen, and a couple of Monster Bitch's friends on a Friday, and the next day in work was really distracted. We finished at the same time, so I offered Shine Sweet a lift. That is, I gave her a ride home in my car for our American friends, and she said yes since we lived pretty close together. In the car, I asked if she had a fun night, just asking to fill the time. I wasn't digging at this point, and she replied in a very non-committal way. I remembered her saying she had a great time to bitch queen earlier during our shift, so I asked her if she was okay. She burst into tears and told me that she'd been in the back of a taxi with Monster Bitch and one of the friends. Bitch Queen was up front, and Mom and the friend had been groping Shin Sweet really hard. She showed me some bruises on her sides and thighs later. She said she had more on her boobs, and telling her she had to go back to their house and experience real sex. I was livid, but I tried to be outwardly calm. I told her that they should be punished, and I would support her, and I knew that Sam, awesome manager, and the bigman would all have her back. I recommended we go to the police, but she was afraid she would lose her job. I knew she wouldn't, but couldn't convince her quickly, and I didn't want to traumatize her further, so I just said whatever she chose I would support, and to call me if she is ever in a similar situation, and I will come get her. She hugged me for ages, crying, and we went and had a cup of tea in her house. Her flatmate knew something was up, and I encouraged Shin Sweet to tell her too. She did, and I left after making them more tea. I had to do something, but I couldn't directly involve Shine Sweet, and although I knew Sam, awesome Manger, and the bigman would believe me, I had no direct evidence of an assault. So, what to do? Well, the first thing was to check where I stood legally, and it turns out the UK is a one-party consent recording jurisdiction. As long as I am in place with no reasonable expectation of privacy, I don't have to inform anyone I am recording audio or video, at least according to the lawyer I asked who is a friend of my stepfather. Work counted as no expectation of privacy, so I was good to record everything. Of course, back then, the smallest video cameras were the size of a small shoebox and really expensive, and I was a burger. Chucker, so cash was tight. Smoking a lot of weed didn't help there either. But you could get some reasonably cheap audio recording stuff that with an okay microphone could be hidden in my shirt. So I started a log of Bitch Queen and Monster Bitch's antics in the store. It was nearly 8 months of recordings in total before the fan was struck by Faces. While they didn't direct much at me anymore, I was able to capture multi-minute rants from both of those awful harpies on almost every shift for about 6 months. In one recording, I got Bitch Queen ranting at a coworker for about 20 mins, and then me for another 30 mins or so after I redirected her towards me. They would call workers, almost always men, but any woman who had turned them down got some crap thrown their way too. Stupid, useless, and worthless, etc., with lots of fun adult words mixed in. They also got into the habit of threatening everyone they disliked with firing. I also got a lot of audio from young women about how creepy and sexually inappropriate Monster Bitch, Bitch Queen, and their little gang of lesbian managers. Most of them were or had dated men, so by guess, but horrible humans regardless of their orientations were to the women who worked for us. I got several direct statements about female coworkers being abused and told to keep quiet by the abuse gang members on various girls' nights out, and a few of them referred to bad things happening at Monster Bitch's house when they were too drunk to remember everything. Basically, we had a blackmail and rape gang operating in our midst. The final attack on me came when I was called into work by awesome manager and told I was being investigated for smoking weed on shift. While I did smoke a lot of weed at the time, I never went to work high. Food you get fired for eating without permission and the munchies don't mix. And anyway, that day in particular the accusation was dated was one where I hadn't had any for a couple of days or been able to sort any out for a couple of days or been able to sort any out for a smoke after work either. So I was totally truthful when I was asked about it by awesome manager. And she said that because of the bullying, she was escalating this to Sam, so she suspended me on full pay pending an investigation. The next day, Sam called me and asked me to come for a formal interview as the first part of the information-finding process. He also said the bigman was on shift and would be happy to be my witness. So I went down and sat in the crew room waiting for Sam with the bigman. Sam stuck his head around the door and said, "Deny everything to do with weed," and winked. He stepped out again and then opened the door with a serious face and asked myself and the bigman to come through to the back office. We went through a few questions and I answered everything truthfully. Pretty sure Sam thought I was smoking that day but gave no damns about weed. And the interview ended with Sam reinstating me, paying me for the previous day and the interview day, and giving me another store to fix for 2 weeks, to get me away from Bitch Queen and the pack of harpies. When I was back from the failing store but not working that Monday, I got a call from Shin Sweet. MB and BK had told her she had to come to their girls' only house party that Friday. It was going to be a BBK and probably a lot of raping drunk girls by hostile lesbians. The rape gang had been telling all the attractive girls to go to the party or think about finding a new job if you can't be a team player. MBBK and another whore worked at our store. The other three worked at a nearby store. And that was the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back. I had those awful witches. I had organized the audio files into groups by person and topic. I had over 10 hours of insults and abuse recorded, and I had nearly another 10 hours of staff telling me how they had been abused by BQ, me and their pack of rapists. I called Sam and told him I had to speak to him that day. He agreed, and we met at a competitor's store. I think they have a kingdom of burger chuckers. At lunchtime, where I sat him down in front of my awful, at the time super cutting edge, laptop and had him listen to bits of the rape allegations first. He started shaking with rage after about 30 seconds, stopped it, and told me to go to the police. I then started on the abusing rants messages, and he listened to bits of a bunch of them and asked for copies of those files. I had already burned them to seed, so I handed them over and went to the police station. I asked for a woman police officer and had her listen to the abuse allegations. She took a CD copy of those and told me to be quiet while they investigated. I said fine, but that this Friday the rape gang would have a number of under 18s at an alcohol-fueled rape party. She asked for and got the address and details. I passed on the names of all the women who I knew for sure had been attacked in the past too, since the police wanted to contact them to confirm things. The police here never give out witness information, so I was safe from retaliation. The next Thursday I was on a late shift, so I arrived around 15:15, and when I got there the store was shut, but the staff were inside. I got let in and told what had happened. Monster Bitch and Bitch Queen had been on day shifts and were apparently nonstop talking about how great their girls' only party would be, how any girl who had a boyfriend would dump him after spending the night with them, and how any women who didn't attend were basically traitors to womankind. After about 6 hours of this, and around 14, 06 police officers come into the store and arrest Monster Bitch and Bitch Queen on suspicion of sexual assault, blackmail, extortion, and assault. They were both removed in handcuffs, and Sam was there just after the police to shut them out of the computers and officially suspend them. When I arrived, they were just getting set to reopen, so we got back to work. Later, I got more info on the case. My best friend's older brother was in the police force locally, and he kept us updated. M's rape house was raided. The police found lots of videos of what was clearly assaults on drunk and non-consenting women. They got lots of text message evidence for planning sexual assaults and talking about how to control young female employees to get them to have sex with the rapist. They also had lots of threatening messages to victims to be quiet or face revenge, loss of job, etc. All their victims were under 20, with most being 16, 18. But the deepest screw-up for them came from this evidence, and I had no idea when I got this all in motion. Monster Bitch had picked up a young woman from a club a few months earlier. This young lady was up for lesbian sex with MBBK and another friend, while Forthon filmed it. But the young lady was 15 and just looked over 18 with makeup, etc. So the rape gang had produced child porn inadvertently. MBBK and all the other managers who were involved were fired after the arrest charges. They were all charged with a number of things, but the courts back then were even more lenient to female sexual offenders than they are now, so none of them saw prison. But they were all banned from working with children, or in an environment where children will be present, and the ones who were married in a relationship were all divorced broken up inside a year. Because of the UK laws at the time, they were also not named publicly. I know Bitch Queen never really recovered or grew past this. I see her now and again if I visit my mother, and she is still beautiful, but so clearly broken it's almost sad. Shinsweet was my girlfriend for a year or so a few years later. We parted on good terms as she was off to study overseas. Awesome Manager went on to be a store manager, and then a pro dominatrix, which wasn't a real surprise to me. She was just a fun lady. The big man went on to run an it-dept in a large company, still a top bloke, and I ended up in a field I love being paid actual money to more or less mess about all day, and that is doing my job. Once upon a time, in my peaceful town, there was a young woman named Lily Thompson. At the tender age of 25, I had found my place in this cozy little town, working as a librarian and relishing the tranquility it offered. But little did I know that an encounter with an entitled parent would soon disrupt my serene existence. It all began on a sunny Saturday afternoon. I was strolling through the town park, enjoying the gentle breeze on my face when, out of the blue, a high-pitched shriek pierced the air. I turned around to see a commotion near the playground. Curiosity getting the better of me, I hurried over to investigate. As I approached, I spotted a red-faced woman with a belligerent expression. She was berating a young boy named Timmy, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. The woman later revealed to be Karen. A fitting name for her kind, was undoubtedly the epitome of an entitled parent. "Timmy, you better get up and let my precious angel have a turn on the swing." "How dare you hog it for so long?" Karen bellowed, her voice dripping with indignation. "But I've only been here for a few minutes, ma'am," Timmy replied, his voice trembling. Unwilling to let such an injustice unfold before my eyes, I decided to intervene. "Excuse me, ma'am, but I believe Timmy has every right to enjoy his turn on the swing. It's only fair." Karen whipped around, her eyes narrowing at me. "And who do you think you are, young lady? Interfering in matters that don't concern you?" I smirked, bracing myself for the battle of wits that was about to ensue. "Well, ma'am, since you're curious, I happen to be a concerned citizen who believes in fairness." "It's a rare trait, I know." Karen's face reddened further, a mix of anger and embarrassment. "How dare you speak to me like that? I demand respect." I couldn't resist a sarcastic remark. "Respect is earned, not demanded, dear Karen." As expected, Karen's entitlement got the better of her. With a fiery glare, she lunged towards me, her fist aimed at my face. But little did she know, I had been taking self-defense classes for years, preparing for such audacious encounters. Using her momentum against her, I swiftly sidestepped her attack, causing Karen to lose her balance and stumble forward. The onlookers gasped, surprised by Karen's failed attempt to physically attack me. In that moment, the villain of our story revealed her true colors, losing her temper and any remaining shreds of dignity. With a mixture of rage and humiliation, Karen screeched, "You will pay for this, you insolent brat." I couldn't help but chuckle, relishing in the irony of her words. "Oh, dear Karen, it seems you're the one who needs a lesson in manners." Amid the chaos, a kind-hearted bystander had called the police, who arrived just in time to defuse the situation. The officers listened to both sides of the story and swiftly determined that Karen's aggressive behavior was unwarranted. As the police escorted Karen away, she continued to hurl insults and threats, her face twisted in fury. Meanwhile, Timmy was finally able to enjoy his well-deserved turn on the swing, a small victory against the forces of entitlement. Back in my college days, several friends and I went to Lake Havasu, Arizona for spring break. Those of you who have been probably hung around the London Bridge Resort at some point. Next to the hotel area, there is a walking path that follows a canal which leads under the old London Bridge and then to Lake Havasu itself. This canal allows people to park their boats within walking distance to the resort. One night, 3 of my friends and I went for a stroll along this path. During our walk, we heard some shouting which went along the lines of, "Be cool, be cool. We're leaving, man, just be cool." My group hung back for a bit. After a sec, a group of guys came up. We asked them what was going on, and they said there was 2 guys in a boat. They were flashing people in the face with a spotlight, talking crap and pissing them off, then pulling out a pistol when they were about to get their butts kicked. We will refer to the guys in the boat as douchebags from here out. So my group decided that we weren't going to stand for this, and came up with a plan. We continued down the pathway to Douchebag's boat and played dumb. We asked them what those guys were so scared of. Being the smug, self-satisfied little douchies, they said those guys wanted to pick a fight with us. So I pulled my gat on them, and it was actually an old .38 revolver. At that point, I knew this was going to be easy. You see, one of the members of our group was a girl. A pretty girl wearing a bikini and cut-off jean shorts. She laid on the dumb bimbo card and in no time had them eating out of her hand. She said, "I've never seen a gun before. Is it heavy? Do you have any more?" Those dipcraps handed her their gun to hold and said, "No, that's the only one." She then handed to our buddy Jay, whose is a 6'4", 280-pound wall of meat. Jay threw that gun close to 250 feet away into the canal, which made a very satisfying thunk when it hit water. Both douchebags were completely speechless. It took them close to 20 seconds just to process what had happened. Finally, one of them spoke and was all what the F, why'd you do that, you better go get it. We just laughed and I said, no, we won't. Think about next time you're flashing people with that spotlight. After a few moments of incoherent shouting, one of them tried to get into Jay's face for some stupid reason. He didn't even make it out of his boat, and Jay shoved him back into his seat hard enough that it broke. Neither one of the douchebags were very big. Our girl buddy could have took them. Other buddy Jace told them to go park somewhere else for the night, because if we saw them again, we would kick their butts for real. So they pulled off, and when they were out and away from us, they started talking crap again, but we just kept laughing at them. After they were gone, we finished our walk, went back to the hotel, and started partying again. It was a great night. So if any of you make it out that way again, get your snorkel out. There's an old rusted piece of crap pistol at the bottom of Canal by the London Bridge Resort. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.